The makers of According to Whim are not responsible for any aneurysms that take place during the viewing of the following segment. You know, it's also very subtle.
What's that?
The balance of nature.
What makes you think that nature's balanced?
I think more than anything that's my point. It's that whole order through chaos thing. The fact that pi is a number that can't be reconciled by something as simple as a complex system of math. Yet it would only make sense in a complex ordered system that can always be reconciled to create the one thing that happens to be the exception to the rule.
So you would contend that that isn't proof of the lack of order or balance?
But what do you call a subtlety at a blatantly obvious party?
What?
Unannounced.
Is that supposed to be funny?
It actually is really funny if you think about the play on words.
I mean, I get it, I just don't find it that funny.
It's actually quite hilarious. You just have to think of the interaction between the words.
Isn't it you who always says that some of the most dull writing ever are essays on how to create humor? He just wrote that in British form. I'm an American, he's making me speak like a Brit. I should start using the word homage just to get his goat. That way I can say, I'm speaking French to be cool, like he writes in British to be cool.
See, our written language is a great example of what I'm getting at. It's been suggested if you put 1,000 monkeys into a room with 1,000 typewriters, they would eventually write Shakespeare. The problem with that idea is that although ideas are all very similar, two people would never write the exact same work unless it was plagiarized. If you even change the name of the main character in the work, it becomes inherently different, even if every other word is the same.
It would still lose in a court of law.
Granted, but it's the reason why two artists can record the exact same song and yet you can still tell the difference, even if it's slight. Or for that matter, why the same artist can record the same song and yet you can still tell the slight difference.
So you would contend that the slightest change in a work would make it completely different from the original work?
What do you call a subtlety at a blatantly obviously party?
Unannounced?
No. Very sneaky.
Once again, I don't know if I can give you credit for humor there.
No, the humor is there. You just don't find it very funny. It's an example of why I'm not a stand-up comedian.
So, what does this have to do with the order of nature?
The balance of nature. The order's simple. Love and Rockets actually stated it quite eloquently that you cannot go against nature because if you do go against nature, that's part of nature too. It's just an equilibrium, but in order to achieve equilibrium, there has to be a point where things are exactly the same. But they never are. History repeats itself, but the names change, the numbers change, the tools change.
So now you seem to be saying that there's no balance to nature.
No, I'm saying that the balance is subtle. You've heard it said that the only constant is change, right?
Of course.
And thus the balance. The complete inability to perfectly mimic the past is the one thing that we consistently mimic. It's pi in the non-mathematical sense. It's the thing that we can't reconcile using something as our complex system of comparison.
But you would contend that chaos is necessary to order, just for the simple need for equilibrium.
What do you call a subtlety at a blatantly obvious party?
Very sneaky?
No, subversive.
You know, each time you've told that joke, it's been the same punchline with a different meaning altogether. I think I'm finally starting to get it.
So then you can simply understand the analysis of this conversation, because while it's a unique conversation, it's referenced the observations of many others. It's run like a conversation in Pulp Fiction, except without the guns and the excessive references to pop culture. In its own way, it's run like a Calvin and Hobbes comic, except without the sled going down the steep hill to its inevitable crash. Meanwhile, it's just like many of the scripts that its author, being me, has ever written for the screen.
So then you would contend that while seemingly to be a completely original work, that this is just rehashed scripts taking on a different form. This is simply the new write a script.
What do you call a subtlety that's at a blatantly obvious party?
Subversive?
No. A TIE fighter.